And welcome back to sort of the Cooler Jets podcast. We're Ben Blessington and Michael Nania. Well, Michael, we finally know the answer to the question that has been on our minds for 4 months now. Who are the Jets going to draft at pick 10? It wasn't at pick 10, one spot back, pick 11. Fashanu, the left tackle from Penn State. A little trade down with the Vikings because J.J. McCarthy was surprisingly on the board. We talked about that, I think, like a month ago on one of our podcasts, how that in some ways was the best case scenario was McCarthy would be on the board and a team would be trying to hop Minnesota. Instead of a team hopping Minnesota, it was just Minnesota securing their guy, the Jets picking up an extra fourth. They now have 3 fourth-rounders and 2 fifth-rounders. So a good trade down and then getting one of the best pass protectors in the draft and getting an offensive lineman, which I know isn't the sexy pick. And a lot of fans were hoping for a trade up for a receiver or were hoping for maybe Brock Bowers at 10 or 11. But the Jets trade down, get the offensive lineman, which was most likely the smartest path for the team. So a lot to break down here. I'm happy with the pick. But Michael, I know you were conflicted because you were also watching the Knicks game 3 at the same time. So I don't know what type of mood you're in right now, but how are you feeling just about an hour after the Jets select Fashanu?
Yeah, I'm not feeling great about the Knicks game. Although I think we still have control of the series. Embiid is a dirty, foul-baiting player. I think the Knicks are going to take care of business here, so it's all good. But I feel great about this Jets pick. I mean, for me, I had kind of slightly leaned towards the team of wanting a wide receiver, specifically trading up for one. And my prediction was that they would trade up to the Falcons spot at 8 and get Rome Odunze, and that opportunity was there. He was available, but with the Falcons shockingly taking a quarterback, I don't think they would have traded out of that pick now that we know that that's what they were planning to do.
They still could have gotten him at 10.
You're saying the Falcons?
The Falcons, yeah, they could have done that trade. But you're right.
That's
they had
true.
their guy.
But,
they didn't want to
although,
play
I mean, with the Vikings, making their, I don't know. You're probably right. You're probably right. But regardless, that's where I was slightly leaning. But I was always like torn between receiver and offensive tackle. My only strong stance was that I didn't love the positional value of taking Brock Bowers at 10. And like, to be clear, I like him as a prospect. I think he's going to be a really good tight end for a long time. It's not a pick I would have been mad about or hated. It's just compared to receiver and offensive tackle, I don't think the positional value was quite there. And then also, I think in terms of year one impact, I think taking Bowers would have been behind this pick that they did make, or if they took a receiver, because you look at the history of tight ends and how they perform as rookies, it's rough. They're generally well below average. Even guys who do turn out to be great, even top 10 picks, it's very consistent that they struggle as rookies. It's a position with a tough growth curve. And, tackles it's the same thing for them. It's the same for receivers, all positions really. But at tight end, it's a very established history. So Bowers could be an outlier there, and he could be a star right away. But I personally like to lean towards the sample sizes that we have versus, what Bowers might look like as a prospect, and he's great. So I would have been slightly disappointed to see them make that pick, just in the sense that I didn't fully trust him to be a substantial year one difference maker at that position. And then in the long run, as a tight end, have more value than a tackle or a receiver could have. But again, I would not have been mad because he is a fantastic prospect. And I think he's going to be a consistent top 10 tight end at the very least. But he was on the clock. I definitely expected him to be the pick if he was there.
Well, let's start there. So the Jets are on the clock. At what point, what part of the Knicks game is that when the Jets are on the clock?
I think this was like mid third quarter, and the Sixers made like 9 threes and had 43 points.
Okay, so the vibes are bad.
The vibes were bad. There's like, actually, I remember thinking to myself, like, this day sucks. The Knicks are going to lose this game. We're going to draft Brock Bowers again. I wouldn't have. To be clear, I would not have been.
You're riding the fence because he might. I
wasn't going to jump
good.
Off a bridge if they drafted Bowers, but I would be kind of stone faced. I would say.
What did you think was going to be the pick? Because I for sure thought it was. I was on the phone with my dad, and I was just like, "It's going to be Bowers." I just think it's going to be Bowers.
I was 100% thinking Bowers.
The reason I was thinking it was going to be Bowers is primarily because if we know anything about Joe Douglas, and this is part of the reason I think you should feel good about the Fashanu pick, is that he's not going to reach for needs. He's always going to go with the best player available on his draft. And I think if that was a question at all. You just have to look at last year when they were in also what we assume to be a win now year, and they take Will McDonald, and their reasoning was, well, he's the highest guy on our draft board. And I just felt, with the way the board was falling, and I think I even tweeted it out, it was just like, if they're going to stay at 10, I think Bowers is probably going to be that highest guy. Like, I just had the feeling that, like, if you're going to rank all these guys objectively, ignoring positional value, ignoring need, ignoring everything, and you're just ranking these guys as players in this class, Bowers is probably a top 10 pick or around a top 10 pick compared to what I was thinking was like Fashanu, Fuwanga, Fashanu, like, and yet again, it happens like every year with the Jets draft. They take a guy that we obviously talked about Fashanu. The one thing I think I kind of discounted Fashanu with was the Jets kind of switching to more of a man gap power scheme, and we have blew it on. Some of the concerns with Fashanu, and it's not to say that he can't do the man gap stuff, but it's like the weaknesses with him is like small hands, needs to refine technique of the run game. Blewett didn't like his nastiness in the run game in terms of like following up plays and just kind of showing that edge. And so I think I kind of moved him down a little bit when we were thinking about the offensive lineman. But the thing you can't take away from him is that he is arguably the most polished pass protector at left tackle. So what you're going to lose a little bit in the technique in the run game, which, look, he won't have a full year to sit because you're going to imagine he's going to play, but he's going to have the opportunity to sit back as offensive tackle 3 and develop, maybe improve some of his play strength, although I did see him deadlifting like 700 pounds for 3 reps. So maybe it's not a strength issue. But regardless, the pass protecting is there for Fashanu. He gets to sit behind one of the best left tackles in all of football in Tyron Smith, and when Smith misses time, he can slide right in. So I get the pick. But going back to like the thought process, I was just like, I feel like Bowers is probably going to be the best player available. This makes me feel a lot better about it, though. The fact that they didn't move down a couple picks and take him. They moved down 1, and you have the feeling that he was the guy that they wanted. Did you? I saw some people tweeting about like the post draft press conference. The energy and the vibe seemed a little low from Douglas and Saul. I'm not sure if that's necessarily what I saw, but some people thought that maybe they did want to make the move up for Odunze. I don't know if you had a chance to catch that press conference, but what were the vibes you're maybe catching from after once the dust had settled from the Jets themselves?
It did seem a little low energy. I feel like in 2022, and granted that was a very unique situation that doesn't happen a lot, but I feel like that year you could feel the positive energy.
Yeah.
And then last year was kind of the same. They weren't super hyped, and I mean Salah was just totally stoic up there. So I don't know. He could have played it up a little bit more for the fans, but it's not too much to read into. I mean, I think was there a video out yet of the reaction of the pick in the war room, or there was at least pictures or something that I saw where they looked pretty hyped up. So I don't know, not too much to read into.
Well, what do you make about because you had this tweet about like, look, in terms of a future pick, and like the draft isn't a shopping list for needs. We say it every year. This is not just a pick for 2024. This is a pick for the next 4 to 5 to hopefully 10 years. And the long-term prospect of adding a left tackle like Fashanu is great because you go back to the last time this team made the playoffs, they were elite in the trenches. You look at the next couple of years when they're going to have to pay guys like Garrett Wilson and Sauce Gardner. Are they going to have the money to be able to re-sign a Tyron Smith, even if he's that good? And then Aaron Rodgers coming back for year 2, or I guess year 3 at that point. And maybe the Jets have to let Tyron Smith walk and you're having to replace both tackle, whatever. Like you're able to add a blue chip left tackle, 21-year-old prospect to this line. That is always a good thing. I think the concern for a lot of Jets fans is the impact in 2024 when it's like, if everybody's healthy, if you're in a Super Bowl right now, is this guy on the bench? What do you kind of make of that? I know you had a long essay tweet. I know you love your essay tweets. What are your thoughts on Fashanu as a year 1 prospect for the Jets?
Well, I mean, just in general, talking about taking an offensive tackle, and I'm looking forward to digging into him more specifically. Like I've skimmed over him like I did most of these guys that were options for the Jets, but now that they finally have their guy, I'm looking forward to going all the way in, instead of wasting time on a bunch of players we'll never care about again. But just speaking about offensive tackle in general and what it means for the year 1 impact, again, this is what I pointed out. I was kind of touching on this earlier, talking about Bowers and what his impact would be in year 1, but I think a tackle is going to help the Jets more this year than Bowers would have. I really do. And I know that's the total opposite of what the narrative is. Like, Bowers is the win now pick. He's going to help you the most this year as
We
you try
said
to win a Super
we said
Bowl.
that a month ago, and we got a lot of criticism. People were clipping that, putting that on Twitter because he said that exactly. Like, the impact of a rookie offensive tackle is going to be more than a rookie tight end. I completely cut you off. I'm sorry. Keep going.
But yeah, I mean, I think, like, in a perfect world, you'd love for the starting offensive line to play every single game. That'd be great. But you have to go with the reality and the facts that we've seen. Tyron Smith has missed at least 3 games, 8 seasons in a row. He's going to miss at least 3 games again. That's what we should expect. And on average, he's missed 6 games. So that is what you should be looking at as your baseline with him. Then you look at Morgan Moses. He's in his 30s. He's coming off pec surgery. He played under 70% of the snaps last year. So that's the equivalent of about 5 games. So that's 2 guys there who you should be expecting to miss 11 games between them. And you can give some slack to Moses because that was an outlier for him. He played every game for the last 8 seasons prior to that. So even let's expect him to miss 2 games, 2 or 3 games. Then that's still 8 or 9 games between the two of them, which is about half the season. So yeah, realistically looking at what you expect these 2 tackles to play, you're probably going to need a backup tackle for 8, 9 games at least. That's your baseline. So this backup tackle is going to play. It's by far the most important non-quarterback position on the roster on a team with a 40-year-old quarterback coming off an Achilles. So it much more so than tight end for sure for making that comparison. And that's not to say tight end can't have a great impact, but you don't need a great tight end to be successful, to win key games late in the season, and to win in the playoffs. It's not necessary.
Well,
But
and they have Tyler
tackles
Conklin. Like,
exactly, yeah, it's not like there's a bad starter
it's
in
not Kellen
place.
Davis. Like,
Yeah. So, but at tackle, you were looking at, okay, who are your backups right now? Max Mitchell and Carter Warren, 2 4th-round picks who have been frankly terrible when they played, and they could both improve. They're young, but they haven't shown anything, and they weren't high draft picks. So you shouldn't expect anything different. It would be a pleasant surprise if they did show you anything different. So you expect both of those guys to be terrible. I know Bakhtiari's out there, but come on now. The guy's had 5 knee surgeries in the last 2.5, 3 years. He's played 1 game in 2 of the past 3 seasons. So again, you should expect that to continue because that's what we've seen. And then outside of that, like Bakhtiari, free agent tackles right now are garbage. There's no one out there you want. People say Donovan Smith, he sucks. He's terrible. So you're looking at the Jets playing half the season with a backup tackle in there who is not good at all. But now at least you have a high-end talent to turn to. And yes, he's a rookie. He's going to have to develop, and his peak is going to be years down the line. You're not getting the best version of Fashanu this year. But still, you look at the history of what first-round tackles typically do over the past decade, and they usually play like below-average starters. They're not terrible. Like I did an article on this recently comparing some of the year one expectations for these positions. And first-round tackles over the past decade, their average, just agglomerating a lot of different statistics, generally are about like a top 40 tackle in the league. So you split that between both positions, that's like a top 20 left or right tackle. That's a huge upgrade over what the Jets were looking at for who would be filling in for these, say, 8 or 9 starts that they're going to need someone to fill in. So there's a ton of year one impact they're getting out of this pick. Hopefully in a perfect world, you don't need it. That'd be great. And then I think if that happens, Tyron Smith plays every single game, Moses plays every single game, you should have a good chance to win the Super Bowl anyway. And then who cares? But most likely, they're going to miss a lot of games. You're going to need this backup to play. And you got a much better one now than you were going to. So I really think the year one aspect of this, a lot of people are just not appreciating how much this is going to matter. And the reason, like, I understand why. It's because right now, you can't look at this and say the Jets are better because you're not changing the starting lineup. Like, people want something that you could insert right in there and say, our starting lineup is better. And like, that's what Brock Bowers can do. That's what a receiver would have done. And again, I was siding towards receiver, but it's hard to do that with this pick because he's a backup, so he doesn't immediately make you better. But being realistic, he's going to play a lot, and it's going to matter because it's the most important position on this team, protecting your starter quarterback who's 40 years old and coming off a serious injury.
Right.
And I think with this particular prospect, out of all the tackles they could have taken, this is the one guy who is very, his skill set and reputation is very lenient towards the pass blocking side. A lot, like you said, a lot of work to do in the run game and that side of things. But what you do feel great about is his pass protection. And that's what the Jets need the most this year. So hopefully down the line he could round out his game and become a complete superstar. But if you're going to take one or the other for this year, then Fashanu's pass protection is exactly what you want to have versus some of the other tackles like Latham, who I really liked and would have, I think I preferred probably number 2 behind Alt. More so lean towards the run game, having a more balanced two-way skill set. But here you're getting the pass protection, and that will be great for a guy who's going to fill in and play key snaps. And say it's a Week 16 game, you're playing in Miami, you need someone to block Jalen Phillips and a huge fourth quarter play. Now it's going to be a top 11 pick with day one ready pass protection instead of Max Mitchell. So I think this is a great win now pick.
Well, when you think about what can really derail the Jets season, obviously number one is Aaron Rodgers going down. But second, I mean, look, there are a few awful scenarios of injuries, but second would be what we've seen the last couple years in the offensive line falling apart, especially a guy like Tyron Smith. Imagine the Jets are in that situation where it's week 12 or 13 and they're winning the division or they're looking good, and then it's all of a sudden it's Tyron Smith goes down, and like you said, it's okay, maybe you're plugging in Bakhtiari, but with his injury history, you have no idea how long he's going to last. Or, you're putting in any of those free agent offensive tackles, which is they're a veteran name, but they're not good. The ability that Olu Fashanu has to be able to slide right in and kind of prevent that worst case scenario of Tyron Smith going down and this offensive line falling apart, and all of a sudden Aaron Rodgers is under pressure immediately, and you had all those numbers about Rodgers under pressure versus having a little bit of time in the pocket and how much of a difference that made for him and his performance. It's you do have one of the best running backs in all football, and it affects him as well, because we're talking about Fashanu's deficiencies as a run blocker. It's still an upgrade over what they'd be getting from Max Mitchell or Carter Warren. This is a blue chip prospect in the offensive line, and I see the value in him this year in a win now year, because I just see that Achilles heel being the health of this offensive line. When you have your star guard playing 12 games in 2 years, you have Tyron Smith not playing a full season in what has it been 7-8 years. Morgan Moses, like you said, only missed a couple of games, but how many games did he leave because of his injury? And he's well in his 30s.
Yeah,
also.
That's another key thing to bring up quick. He played 14 games last year. He only played 100% of the snaps in 8 of those. So I think Morgan Moses has a great durability history. Hopefully he gets back to that. But last year was definitely a shaky one as he goes into his 30s.
So you have a guy that's going to play. And if I'm being honest, he's probably going to play more games than he's not, because I know we're doing all the math of okay, well, maybe he'll play 3 games for Tyron Smith and a couple games. But let's just be honest. Tyron Smith's going to get out in that MetLife turf. The Jets are going to do their thing, and he's going to get hurt. Not putting anything out there, but one of these guys is going to get hurt week 3 or week 4. It's going to be a devastating injury, and you're going to be well, thank God we took this guy number 1. If we're just being honest about what we should be used to and what we should prepare for as Jets fans, it's prepare for a catastrophic injury on the offensive line. And the Jets have done a nice job to be able to secure their depth or fortify their depth and to be able to protect against that. But this isn't just a draft pick for 2024. And I know the entire offseason is just about this year, and it's a win now year. So that's where some of the frustration is coming from. But when you look at the long-term prospect of being able to draft, if you believe that this guy is your D'Brickashaw Ferguson, and I've seen some of those comparisons, or whoever, if you believe this is a long-term left tackle for your franchise, it's absolutely worth it. So, we'll have Blewett on again, and we can talk about the player. From what I've seen, it's a super polished pass protector. There are some issues in the run game, but I think you feel he's 21. He's a good kid. He's in about as good of a situation he could possibly be in as a young rookie offensive tackle, because not only is he sitting behind Tyron Smith and Morgan Moses, and he doesn't have that pressure to go out and play immediately. Not only does he have Aaron Rodgers in the huddle to help him out with any of the nuances of an NFL offense, he's also going to get to go against his defensive line every day in practice, which is incredibly deep. And he's going to have those matchups with Jermaine Johnson and with Will McDonald and with Hassan Reddick and all these guys. And that's going to make him a better player too. So in terms of developing this player, like if I'm Olu Fashanu, this is the best possible spot for him to develop into what you think he could be in terms of a long-term blue chip left tackle. He doesn't have to play immediately, although he's going to play at some point. He has a Hall of Fame quarterback in the huddle, and he gets to go up against one of the best defensive lines every day in practice. Like, this is a perfect situation for him, and I think because of that, you feel good about the player developing. One of the things, though, that people are concerned about is like receiver. It's like, which I think people are kind of undervaluing, I think, the Mike Williams signing. Like, I think it's kind of like one of those things where it's like, okay. And they kind of look at his injury issues. The weird thing I've seen is Jets fans overestimating Mike Williams' injury issues and underestimating Tyron Smith's injury issues, because Williams has had some injury issues, and I know he came to the league with like a back issue, and he missed last year. But before that, he's averaging missing what? Like, I can pull it up, but it was like a game a year, 2 games a year.
Yeah.
I know he missed a couple at the end of 2022 as well. But like, I think the impact of Mike Williams is going overlooked. I also think, like, while Lazard is not liked by this fan base very much, I don't think he's as bad as some people try to pretend he is, especially when he's going to be back in that receiver 3 role with Aaron Rodgers. And it's receiver 3, but it's also like you have Conklin, you have Breece Hall as well. Like, they obviously need to add somebody at receiver. Like, I'm not trying to sugarcoat this and pretend like the Jets are completely set at receiver, but it's not a disaster. You have a guy in Garrett Wilson who, with Aaron Rodgers, I feel comfortable at the very least as being a top 10 guy. With Aaron Rodgers, I feel like he can be a top 5 guy. Mike Williams is about as good as it gets as a wide receiver too, if he's healthy. But beyond that, like, yeah, you want another body in there. And they have that 3rd round pick to do it. They've picked up some other picks to maybe trade back into round 2. And maybe they can move up and get somebody. There's also some guys in the open market, Tyler Boyd, Corey Davis. So what do you kind of feel like? It feels like the Jets need to add at least one more receiver. Which path would you take if you were Joe Douglas?
Well, I mean, there's a lot of different options to do it. I think, which we didn't touch on yet. The trade they made moving down gives you some ammunition to move up if you want to do that. Because they really do have a surplus of picks now for a team that has a lot of depth, and almost to the point where, if you use all of these picks, I think a trade up is pretty likely, because how many picks do they have? They have 9 picks now, right? Remaining?
Yeah, something like that. I'm
Or,
trying to find the full list.
7 remaining? And 8 total.
Yeah.
Right?
Something like that. I'm getting the whole picks.
Trying to get the math right, but
yeah.
Bottom line, they do have a lot of picks here, and most of them would be used on players who are developmental. So I think it's fair to argue that it would be better to package some of those and turn them into one higher valued player. So I do think there's a good chance they're going to make some sort of trade like that. Can they get all the way up into the 2nd round? That'll be interesting to see if they can pull that off. Or will it just be adding another 3rd round pick? I don't know, but it does feel like there's a good chance that they might try to do that and tap into this receiver class. Do you see a trade up coming?
Yeah, so they have 7 picks. I was wrong. They only have 1 5th. I thought they had their own 5th rounder, but I guess that I was wrong about that. But they have 3 4ths, a 3rd, a 5th, a 6th, and a 7th, according to the New York Post. I think the most likely option is that they're going to move up into the 3rd. Like, if I'm going to make a bold prediction, if you want to call it that, I think they make 2 picks tomorrow. I think they have, at the very least, another pick in the 3rd, because those 3 4th rounders, I think the last time they had 3 4s was 2020 when they took James Morgan, Cameron Clark, and LaMichael Pirine. So I think you can parlay some of those picks into maybe sneaking into the end of day 2 and getting a higher impact player. I do think they make a trade tomorrow. I think they make a move up the board. Maybe it's not even 2 picks. Maybe it's moving up the 1 3rd rounder you have and sneaking into the 2nd. But I think they make some sort of move up tomorrow. And if you're just looking at it from a need basis, I think you're saying it's probably receiver. But we've been talking about it for a while. I won't be surprised if the Jets take a corner, and like, it might just be one of their 4th rounders they take a corner. But we've been talking about, it's like you have Michael Carter II, and you have DJ Reed, both 1 year left on their deal. When you get into day 2 and day 3 especially, it's like you're looking towards your needs a year from now, not necessarily your needs right now. to good, there are going to be some good corners available day 2, day 3, especially with, what was it, like 20 something offensive players going in the first round. So I wouldn't be surprised if they take a DB, but like if you're just going to go from a needs basis, yeah, one more receiver would be nice. When you think about the type of receiver you think they're going to target, you know, it was, if you're going to buy into the hype that they were into Rome Odunze, who's more of a big body, jump ball, contested catch type of receiver, do you think that's the type of receiver that they're trying to bring into the offense, or do you think that was just because he was a higher ranked player? Because when you look at this, I think the thing we would say is like, they need that speed, they need that deep threat, they need somebody who's, maybe takes away some reps from Xavier Gibson. Is that what you see, or is it just kind of like, we'll just take whatever the best receiver is on the board?
I kind of feel like it's best receiver available. I don't know if at this point it would be worth sacrificing, taking maybe one player over another just based on the skill set, because long term they could really add anything. And even if you look at the offense right now, Mike Williams gives you the verticality, the size, the contested catch ability. I mean, Garrett Wilson gives you everything. Then after that, a slot receiver, speed guy is probably what would be ideal to fit into that. But you could also get like a big slot type of receiver. It doesn't have to be, a shifty guy in there. There's a lot of different ways you could do it. So I would lean towards best receiver available more so than something specific.
Yeah, I mean, you're probably right. Like, I think we know that, especially if it's not the case in round 1, which it almost certainly is for Joe Douglas, it definitely is in day 2 and day 3 that they're just going to go best player available. So, like, as I said, I won't be surprised, and some Jets fans might get angry about this if they like take a safety or a corner or a tight end or something where it's like people will get angry about. But
I'm gonna lock that prediction in. I think it's gonna be a corner, their first pick tomorrow.
I can see it. Like, and people are going to be upset about that because they just look at it like, well, this guy's going to slide right in and fill the need. But it's like they're just trying to draft the best players that they see, and these are guys that you're drafting for 4 years. On day 2 and day 3, these are 4-year players for you. And so when you look at the Jets' needs from 2 to 3 years from now, it's like it's definitely corners one of them. You're going to have to pay Sauce. I mean, $25 million a year, something like that, something crazy.
One of Reed and Carter isn't going to stay. I think that's the unfortunate reality.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, that's just the reality. When you draft good players, you have good players. Like, you're gonna have to let some walk. I think Reed probably walks next year, and you try to re-sign Michael Carter the second. So it's like, yeah, it would be nice to get a jump on that and trying to, if you're able to draft somebody in the 3rd or the 4th that you feel good about and gets a year to kind of sit behind them, you feel like they can slide right into the starting spot. And then in 2025, you're not left desperately trying to fill a position like that with limited resources, limited cap space. So I wouldn't be surprised by that. I think receiver is the one that people are going to keep their eyes on. Ultimately, I do think they bring back Corey Davis. I know there's rumblings about him wanting to go back to Nashville. Maybe that happens, but I think that just makes too much sense. Bringing him back, giving him another guy who's, I mean, I know he's had some injury issues, but pretty durable, pretty reliable. Obviously, some fans, it's like, oh, he had some of the drop issues and whatnot, but it's like, compared to what's left, I think you could get Corey Davis for pretty cheap and feel good about it. And I do think they'll add another receiver, whether it's round 3 or round 4. Like, we'll see. I think the number one thing, and this is the one thing that was going in favor of drafting Brock Bowers, is the yak ability that he had. I think when you look at the receiver they're going to draft, like, obviously they're going to take best player available, but like, if you're able to get a guy like Malachi Corley, who I've seen mocked the Jets a lot, somebody that you feel like can give you that kind of that microwaved offense, which is what I was kind of thinking about with Brock Bowers, where it's like, all right, you can give him that 2-yard route to the flat. He'll make a DB miss and you can get 5-6 yards. You can get that in the 3rd or 4th round with the receiver. You can get somebody who can do some of those things for you. And it's also, you have to factor in like the kickoff changes. Honestly, like, I don't think it's a huge deal. I do think the Jets have some guys on the roster you feel good about doing it, but like, if you're able to get somebody at receiver who you think can handle some of the yak stuff and maybe take away Xavier Gibson's reps, and can also fulfill some of those kick returning duties as well, I think you feel good about it. But again, they're not going to be drafting for needs, so I won't be surprised if it's a DB or a tight end, or hell, maybe even another offensive lineman, because they still have a need to get one more backup interior guy. But I think we've kind of said everything we want to say so far. I mean, now we finally know who they picked, and so we can really sit back and watch. I watched Fashanu's 2023 season. I watched Blewett's review on him, so I feel pretty good about the player. I feel very good about the direction the Jets went in here. I know that especially the closer you get to the draft, and I know you kind of felt you succumb to this, and maybe will ultimately be the right move. It's like the closer you get to the draft, and especially when you're watching the draft, the weapon is the exciting thing. So like even yesterday and today, I kind of felt it. I was like, oh, trading it for Rome Odunze would be fun, and like that may you may look back and that might have been the best move for the franchise, but trading back, adding 2 day 3 picks, and still getting an offensive lineman, a guy you can feel like can be a long-term starter in the offensive line, like that to me is the smartest move this franchise could have made. It's keeping Aaron Rodgers upright is the most important thing of this season. Avoiding any catastrophic injury to Tyron Smith is important to the season. Blocking for Breece Hall is important to the season. So I see this as if we're going to grade this, which I know draft grades are dumb, I would probably give it a B plus. I think like that's kind of where I think I'd fall on this. Like I like the player. I like that they went offensive line. I was kind of hoping for Latham. I think I had Fashanu slightly ahead of Fashanu just because of the positional versatility, because you could have played him at guard. But the trade down and getting a guy like Fashanu, it's hard to hate against. So I think I go B plus for this. I don't know how you feel.
Yeah, I think I agree. I mean, big points for the trade because, I mean, that's as good of a trade as you could do. It's literally just free assets. You gave up nothing. So great job by Douglas there. And I wonder, you wonder what the motivation was for Minnesota to make that trade. Obviously, they felt like someone else was
Probably
in the mix
Denver.
to potentially move into that spot. Denver is a candidate, someone who could have been there. So I wonder from the Jets' perspective, like, did they choose between multiple offers? And if they did, I understand why they took this one because, like I said, it's very appealing to make a one spot trade down when the team you're trading with isn't taking a guy that you're interested in. Because then at that point, it's not even a trade. It's like they're just paying you to take your spot because you're not giving anything. So I wonder if they're choosing between that and a further trade down, like you mentioned Denver, where maybe there's more risk of losing. Like maybe they would have gotten more back, but they also could have risked losing someone that they wanted to draft because it was a further drop. So they took the trade that was just the free assets. So I wonder what the options were, but nonetheless, great trade to just you add a 4th-round pick plus one round upgrade to another pick. Great job there. Now you have more ammunition to potentially trade up tomorrow. So really big points for that more than anything because the prospect, like, we'll see. No one really knows. That's why prospect rating is stupid because it's just pointless. But the trade itself,
That's not
that's a
entirely
great
true.
job.
I know you've adopted
It
your
is.
moniker, the
It
draft
is.
nihilist. It's not pointless.
It's true.
It's
It
not.
is.
It's not true. Well, then how are these draft picks being made at all? You watch the guys in college. You find the traits that you like. You find yeah. I mean, it matters a little bit, more than a
But
little bit.
how does it matter? What does our grade matter if we don't know
Oh, our
what they're
draft
going to be
grade.
like?
Our
Yeah,
draft
yeah.
grade is pointless. Yeah.
That's what I'm saying.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Like our draft grade is Well, I thought you were saying like the film that these prospects are putting out. It's point
No,
like
no, I'm saying our grade does. I'm saying we could give them positive points for the trade. Like that's clearly a positive.
right.
The player, I'm saying, like, who knows?
Yeah. I guess it is a question mark
But I
exactly what
do
it'll be.
like
But
I will say the fact that Bowers was there and they took the tackle over him. I was impressed by that. I really like the positional valuation and the prioritization of the most important thing on this team, which is protecting Aaron Rodgers. So I
well,
really like
and
that
it
they
makes
did
you feel
that.
good about that. You think Fashanu, like if you just have to visualize what their board looked like. I don't know the exact numbers, but like it makes you feel good about like, hey, Fashanu might be the 6th guy on their board, and Bowers might have been the 8th guy on their board. That's kind of what I was saying. Where it was like I felt like it was going to be Bowers because I knew that he was going to be in those top 10 players. Like if you're just going to rank these guys objectively, he is a top 10 player in this class. And I was kind of worried about outside of Alt and outside of Latham, is one of these tackles going to be above him? Maybe I was just preparing myself for the worst. I know we put out that episode that was titled like why the Jets need to avoid Brock Bowers, and I wasn't looking forward to eating that. But I thought it was going to be Bowers, and when they said it Olu, I was I was pleasantly surprised. So yeah, I mean, we'll have another podcast this weekend after the Jets have made their other picks, and we can fully talk about it. Michael, you can finally go watch this guy in full. But I highly recommend Joe Blewett's uh, breakdown of Olu on the Jets X Factor channel. That's a great place to start. But ultimately, I know it's not the sexy pick. I know some fans are going to be upset by this, but I'm very happy with the direction the Jets are going with this. We'll see what they do at receiver, but I feel good about the long-term prospect of their offensive line now. When you think about some of the young blue chip guys they got on that line with Tippmann, with Fashanu, with AVT, the long-term future of this line, you feel good about going forward. No more of the give me some random Jets. Greg Van Roten was pretty good last year. Brandon Shell, Brino Giacomini's.
Yeah.
Feel free to throw one out to me, Michael.
Did you
Thank
say
you.
Connor McDermott already?
No, you got Connor. That's a good one.
Chuma
Edoga. Yeah. I mean, yeah, I think, yeah. But anyways, I guess we can get out of here. Not much else to say about that. I feel good about the pick. Let us know what you think. Comment below. Tweet us at CYJ Pod. I'm just thankful we don't have to deal with the backtracking on our Bowers take. I was getting ready for it. Speaking of that, why did the Raiders take him? Didn't they just take Mayer last year?
Yeah, that's true. I didn't even think about that.
It's like, and then also the Falcons taking Penix, and I like Penix a lot, but like, you're gonna go pay Kirk Cousins like $120 million or whatever.
That was the only, at least for the 10 picks of the draft that I watched, the only shocker.
I was glad though, because I put $5 on McCarthy being the pick at 10. Like, he just had to be picked at 10 because I thought there was a long shot that it can maybe be available, and if that was the case, I thought the Jets would trade down, and so that won like $105. I also put like $20 on Neighbors being the pick at 6. So I cleaned up this draft day. Won some money. Jets moved back. Jets got an offensive lineman. It was a good draft day. But you can follow us at 2AJ Pod on Twitter. Michael _Nania, myself, Ben W. Blessington. Go to jetsxfactor.com. Best place to go for Jets content. Please rate, review, subscribe on iTunes if possible. That'll do it for us. Michael, last thoughts.
Yeah, I come out of tonight feeling really good. I love the trade. I really like the long-term value of this pick. I think that's tackle is a premium position, so I like building the pipeline there, continuing to invest assets into that unit, and down the line, I don't think anyone debates that this is a great pick for 2025 and beyond. But above anything, I would implore Jets fans to appreciate how much how much the Jets are going to benefit from this pick this year at some unforeseen point, because it's hard to envision it now.
Week 1,
you don't
4 plays in.
You don't want that. You don't want that point to come. So I think that's why it's harder to appreciate, because the impact would come in an unfortunate scenario where someone gets injured. So nobody wants that. But if you're being realistic, it's going to happen. So it's just good to have a talented player there to step in instead of, a bottom of the barrel player. So I'm excited about that.
I love that the one time I ask you, Michael, last thoughts, you don't bring up the uniforms, and we haven't done a podcast since the new uniforms. And people have been tweeting. I know it's old news.
Yeah.
We're not going to spend 20 minutes on it, but people have been tweeting at us, wondering where our podcast on the new uniforms is. I'm looking at your background on YouTube. You still have the old uniforms behind you.
Yeah.
We can give I mean, what else is there to break down? It is what we thought it would be. They're glorious. The green jerseys, once again, are great jerseys to buy. Like with this 2019 disaster class, you didn't really want to buy a green Jets jersey because it wasn't good compared to the white and the black. Finally, the green jersey takes its throne, and hopefully the Jets can wear it, 7-8 times this year at home. Very happy with the Jets unis. I can get the sense you're tired, so we'll get out of here. But any thoughts, any parting thoughts on the Jets uniform rebrand?
Well, I was disappointed we didn't get to see it on the stage tonight because they did not pick a player who was in attendance.
13 players were at the draft.
One of the 13 who were there. I mean, I guess like you said, who wants to go to Detroit for the draft? No offense to Sauce's hometown, but it's not Vegas. So yeah, that was a little disappointing. But yeah, I have no complaints. It's about what we expected. Literally, the only difference compared to what I expected was I thought they were going to do no green outlines for the numbers on the black jerseys. They did do green outlines. I like it. I'm cool with it. But I also kind of thought it would look good if the white numbers just stood on their own. But no, I'll stay a Jets fan in spite of that.
Yeah, I
But
thought the I
yeah,
thought the only thing they could have
perfect.
done
I
was
think.
maybe match the helmet
Other
logo
than
with the
that,
numbers. Match the helmet logo with the numbers, where it's like, okay, either go
oh, just like straight up white logo on the helmet
well,
on
white
the
with the
black
green
helmet.
outline, white with the green outline, or
Oh,
if you're
oh
gonna go
yeah, yeah.
green with the white outline, then make the numbers green with the white outline. You know what I mean? Like that would have been the only thing I would have said. But outside of that, they're perfect. I mean, that's exactly what I want. Keep it simple, stupid. These are uniforms you can wear for 30 years. They can bring back the Namath alternates when they want, or white helmet alternate. I was very
That's
happy
another
with
thing. Like I thought. Well, actually, I mean, I don't know if I did think they would unveil that now because it's something they could still do it in a couple months or they could save it for next year. So hopefully at some point they take advantage of the three
They
helmet
will.
rule,
They will.
throw back in there.
The
But
Jets love their
yeah,
uniforms. Woody Johnson knows that this is an easy way to please the fan base. They will definitely bring back the white alternate Namath helmet unis at some point, but probably next year is what I would say, or
yeah,
maybe when Rodgers leaves, so they can like soften the blow with a new
and another
uniform.
interesting part of the discussion is the logos and the usage of the oval,
Oh,
which we've had some differing opinions on. I'm not the hugest fan of it. You like it more than I do,
yeah.
and it's been used a good amount already, like on the NFL website.
You're talking about the oval with the '80s Jets inside of it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, I don't
It's
think that's actually
fine.
the official primary logo. I think just the word by itself is, but
Yeah,
I've
but like
seen
they
both
need
used a lot.
something. Yeah, like
They
but
need
sometimes
something
you
that's more like square, I guess.
yeah. Well, I will. I do recommend, and I tweeted it out. I'm trying to find I think it's UniWatches. If you go to @UniWatch on
Yeah,
X, but Paul Lucas has a Substack. I had to pay $5 for it. For the article that he did, where he interviewed a former Nike creative director, where he talked about, he gave the deets about the whole 2019 redesign. For anybody who's interested just in the uniforms or just branding in general or whatever, I found it fascinating because he has like the original pitch deck. He has like alternate uniforms that they almost went with. There are two ones that they were really close on. All these logos that the NFL had pitched that were just awful. And the NFL is in charge of the logo, so that's really where I think that the 2019 uniform was bad. But I highly recommend that article because I think it gives Woody Johnson. I think my favorite moment was when he pulled up his phone and he pointed to the text app, like the iMessage app, and he said, "Well, I like that green. I like that." Like it's just like this is a young, youthful, vibrant green. I like this green. It was a whole thing. It took him years to decide on the green, but it is a fascinating article. I would give all the details about it, but I get the sense, Michael, you're going to fall asleep if I don't just get us out of here.
probably.
So thank you everybody for listening. Hope you enjoyed day one of the NFL draft. We'll be back probably Saturday night after
Oh,
both day two
I
and
got
day
one
three.
more thing to say.
Oh, now you got things. All right, go ahead.
I see these videos of whatever number of people it is 150,000, 200,000 people at the draft. And I just wonder, like, what kind of person do you have to be want to be in there? I
I,
just do not understand it in the
I almost
slightest.
went in 2022
Like,
because
what are you watching? What are you
I
watching?
think it's the draft experience. I
I want to
imagine there
be
are things.
in that pool of hundreds of thousands of people,
It's not
no
your seat,
room
Michael. We get it.
whatsoever.
That's fine.
You're like a sardine in there. Just I don't get it.
I don't know why you do it in Detroit. I almost went to the one in Vegas because I was out in Arizona and it's a couple-hour drive, and I was like, "Oh, this is a big draft for the Jets. It could be kind of fun." Vegas would have been the only one that I think would have been worth it, or maybe seeing like when it was at Radio City Music Hall, like seeing it there in New York, like that seems kind of fun. But no, I agree with you. It looked awful. All right, thank you everybody for listening. Have a great weekend. We'll be back on Saturday talking this draft class. Go Jets.